And I will push out the recording. So if any of you miss anything or you want to see it again, you're certainly welcome to view it as many times as you need to get it. And I'm going to speak to some of the uses here as well. So first, let me just talk about what a text function is. So a text function deals with how you manipulate text. So traditionally, when people learn Excel, they learn about like sum and average and min and max and all of that. But, spreadsheets are almost useless without the supporting information like names, addresses, and all kinds of other stuff. And how organized and well that is can really be helpful, especially if we have to generate reports. And it depends on where we're getting our data from. So if we're getting our data from people inputting stuff, sometimes they don't input it so great. Okay, so this is going to help you kind of clean up your data. Also, I will tell you, if you have to do like pivot tables, some of the stuff you must do because it's going to screw up your pivot tables if you don't have it right. So the first of the two that I want to talk about are proper and trim and proper. And I actually can even add a few more to this, okay? So there are three text functions that are all good to know, but the most important one is proper. But I may as well just show you all of them. So one of them is called upper, and that just makes whatever you look at uppercase. Now I'm going to go to the second example here because the first one's already uppercase. So if I do equals upper, that's just going to turn it uppercase. And you could guess lower is lowercase. But the most common one, and the one that, is like the most important one to have in your toolbox, is proper. So what proper does is it capitalizes the first letter of each word. So obviously it's very helpful with names, but even for other things. So here, if I do proper, be nice if I did the equals, no function mark without equals. And then I'm just going to scroll down. Notice what it did. It capitalized the first letter of every word because this list intentionally was a mess. It was just a mess. The second way that it was a mess had to do with spacing. And so this next one's really helpful too. It's called trim. Okay. And so what trim does, and I'm just going to actually do it for using the column that we already did the proper for. So therefore we will kill, we'll clean up the second problem. And then I'll show you how to combine them. Okay. But what trim does is it gets rid of leading spaces, trailing spaces, and extra spaces in between words. So an example of a leading space would be, this is a bunch of leading spaces. I'm sure you can see that. So it's just extra spaces in front of text. A trailing space is at the end that you can't even see. Okay. But it can mess up your pivot tables. Okay. And then you can also have extra spaces in between. So here under fish sandwich, there were actually two spaces instead of one. Okay. So what happens is if I go and I do trim, and noticed it got rid of the extra side salad space, the extra space in front of hamburger. It just cleaned it all up. Okay. So first of all, how many of you were familiar with that? Did you know that? So these are really good things to know. Now, you might be tempted at this point to want to delete these columns, but the problem with that is they're connected. So if I delete this, it's going to eliminate the other item. So what I have to do when I'm finished, and you're going to see this, I find with a lot of text functions, after you use them, you're going to want to do one more step. And that is you're going to take the text and you're going to copy it. And then you're going to paste it and do a paste special that's values. So once you do that, now it's just the straight text that's been cleaned up, and then you can eliminate your other item. In fact, you could just delete these columns. The other way you could have done it, it's basically the same thing, okay? So I'll just do this last one because I already had the proper there. And it just did the same thing, but now it's, it's the functions. So what I could have also done is copy it and then paste it back on the original. And then I could delete the additional columns. Do you follow? But you have to kind of do that last step. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with all this, bad data. Now, how can you combine them? And by the way, order doesn't matter in the combining. So you can actually, it doesn't matter whether you do your nest proper into trim or trim into proper. I'll show it to you both ways. It's pretty easy. But what you're going to do is here, you're going to go equals. I'll do it in the order we did them. And then inside that, I'm going to put trim. And then my item. Now, what sometimes confuses people when they get these nested things is how many closed parentheses do I need? So I'll just say a little trick to know. You count the functions. So there were two functions, right? So if two functions, you need two closed parentheses. And there you go. You're done. Okay. And then you can scroll down. So I got rid of both of them. I still would have to do the copy and paste special, but that knocked them both off at the same time. And just to show you that it doesn't matter, okay, I could have put trim on the outside and proper on the inside. And I'm going to get the exact same result. So it's completely up to you. But in a lot of cases, I'm doing both, depending on my data set. But I find this hugely useful. How many of you knew this before? I'm just curious if you were familiar with this. And just give me a yes or no. Okay. And yeah, it comes in handy with a lot of things. Okay. All right. So this is a bonus. Technically, it's not a text function, but just one more area to clean up. So I'm going to insert a couple of blank rows, which is another thing that'll throw off like a pivot table, okay? So if I only had two of them here visually, I would probably just delete the rows. But what if I had a data set with like hundreds of these, with even dozens of these? Is there a quick way to get rid of all of them? And the answer is yes, okay? So I just want to show you that because it's pretty easy to show. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is highlight your data set. And you're probably going to end up having to scroll down to do it because of the blanks. Then what you're going to do is you're going to go search and find. You're going to go to special. That's one of your search options, and you're going to select blanks. What that's going to do is highlight your blank rows. Now you have to highlight because there's so many blanks in your spreadsheet. Everything would be blank. So you must highlight first. Then once you do that, you can actually just hit delete. But if you want to be a little more granular, you can just, go to the drop-down bar, and then that'll delete your blank rows. And there you're good to go. Okay, so that's the kind of extra last thing that you might be doing with a data set. Getting rid of blank rows and doing trim and proper. How many of you knew you could get rid of blank rows that way, as opposed to having to delete every single one? Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah, you could do it by sort, then you'd have to like individually delete all those items. This is a little bit better. So this next one, it's interesting. First of all, it's new. So if you go to it's funny, I took my old Mac out and it's not all that old. And I tried this and it did not work because I hadn't upgraded my Excel version to 2021. So if you try this on your computer and it's not working, it could be because you have an older version of Excel. And if you're an Office 365 customer, my recommendation is you update, and that'll fix it, okay? So don't be surprised if you don't find it, because it is really new, okay? So, and I'm just gonna redo it, even though I have it done already. Okay, so what the unique function does is it identifies all the unique items. So this particular list, I mean, it's just a list, but let's assume this was connected with people's names and what departments they were in. And I want a list of all the departments. So I've got like multiple art, multiple social studies. So what unique does is it eliminates all the duplicates. So let me just tell you a couple of uses. And again, how familiar you are with Excel may matter. But if you wanted to do like a drop-down menu based on the subject, and you just did the scrolling of this, you're going to get multiple social studies. So if you do unique first and then do your drop-downs based on this, you're going to get, you're going to get it in a better way. Now, you also probably might want to sort this list alphabetically, because unique doesn't sort, okay? So, and there are a couple of different ways to sort. You could just go to the A to Z sorting. I mean, there's a lot of other ways. But if you wanted to sort using a function, okay, what you could do is put sort on the outside of here. And again, and that'll sort them. Now, there's a lot of different pieces to sort, because it's a pretty advanced function where you can tell it what column to sort. But if you just want to sort like a nice, like just one row, one column, you don't have to worry about any parameters. You can just put sort in the items. Now, by the way, something that you should note about this is an array function. So what do I mean by an array function? So the actual function is only sitting in one cell, yet it generated all the others. So if you actually go to click anything else, it shows it grayed out, okay? Because it's not actually in here. So this is another one where I don't really like that. So I'm probably going to come after I'm finished and go, and we already are familiar with the routine, paste special, and paste it to values. And now I'm not going to worry about what happens to that one cell, because before it was only located in the one cell. And an array function means as you fill it in, it affects more than one cell. Okay. So how many of you were familiar with the unique function? Yes or no? Okay, so let me tell you a practical use of it. It's amazing as you learn these things, you find uses, right? So I had a list of email addresses. I have these database lists, right? And I had a feeling that some of them had duplicates. In fact, I could really tell you what the list was. So it was a list of my contacts for West Virginia. So I had a West Virginia email list, I had a West Virginia facilities list, and a West Virginia transportation list. And I had a feeling that in some cases people were on multiple lists, right? And which was just going to create more problems when I wanted to do a blast email out, right? So what I did was I copied all of the lists into one row. And then I use the unique function. And I found that there were actually 40 items that were duplicates, because anytime there was more than one of the same email, it just eliminated it using the unique function. So now I have a nice clean one main list. Or if you have people registering, say, for some event like this, and people register twice. And by the way, I have people who register more than once, they forget. And they register more than once. So if I want to do a blast, it's easier for me to just do unique. So anytime you're dealing with names, or you're dealing with email addresses, the unique function can be really helpful in, just eliminating any duplicates. Okay. So maybe you can think of some uses I even haven't thought of for it. I'm sure others will come up, but I found it to be extremely handy just this week, in dealing with information. It always does a row. Well, I shouldn't say that. It depends on the function. So with unique, it's going to put it down a row. One of the functions I'm going to show you, the sequence function, may go to multiple multiple columns, but generally, at least for the ones I've shown you so far, which is only really one, it's going to go down the rows. Okay, does that make sense? The last function I'm going to show you today is the sequence function, and depending on how you tell it, it will do multiple columns and rows, and it's still an array function. Okay. But most of them tend to go down the rows, okay? All right. So the next functions I want to talk about are left, right, and mid. And honestly, mid, I like the least. And it's becoming, to a certain extent, it's becoming somewhat obsolete. Combining a bunch of very complex functions, a few that I'm not going to show you together, and mid will let you pull out someone's middle name, for example, from a list, right? So you can use it for that, but I'm going to show you the more simpler examples of its use. Okay, so here we have a couple of fake social security numbers, okay? And let's start with the most common one. So for security reasons, if I'm going to do a report, I saw this in a school. They were using kids' social security numbers, but they didn't want to have the full social security. So they just used the last 4 digits, okay, for record keeping or for a report, okay? So what I want to be able to do is pull the last 4 out. Okay, so I'm actually going to start with the right function to show you this. So the right function, and let me actually have something that you can do it against. I'll just pull this number. So the right function has 2 parameters. So it's what do I want to look at and how many digits from the right do I want to pick? So if I'm doing the last 4 digits, and that's just going to give me the last 4 digits. Follow? Now let's talk about a practical use. I have information on employees, and that information includes their full social security numbers, but I want to generate a report. So I don't want to eliminate the social security numbers, but what I'm going to do is use the right function, create an additional column, and then I'm going to hide the column that has the full social security number when I print the report. Do you follow? And so all you're going to see is the last 4 digits for security. Okay. I'll give you another use of that one. Banks. In fact, I had this only this week. So I'm working with the district on their manual. And in the manual, we listed in the original manual all the bank account numbers. Okay. And I had a conversation with the assistant superintendent, and we decided, you know what, this manual is public. I'm not so sure I'm thrilled about having our full our full bank account numbers known. So we decided we would do something that's become pretty common, which is just to show the last 4 digits. So once again, the right function is perfect for this, right? Because it's just going to pull the last 4 digits of each of the bank accounts. So rather than me having to manually type all of the last 4 digits again, I just created an extra column. I did the right function, which gave me the last 4 digits. And then in the copy that I showed, I just hid the full bank accounts. Do you follow? Okay. So once again, that would be an example in which you could use it. And again, a lot of times we are looking at last 4 digits. All right. So when do you use the left function? Because I think that's clear on the right function. Most common use of the left function, and we're going to eventually combine it with another function. But what if I only wanted a first initial? I could then do just a first initial or a last initial, okay? So as you're going to see, when I go to show you the next thing, we're going to talk about how we can use this with names, okay? Where we're going to actually combine it and use it to be able to say a name if we had, and again, I'm going to show you in a minute, but if we had something like this and we wanted to change it to J. Olefson, how would we do that? Or what if we wanted the first name and we just wanted, J.O., Jeff, O, dot O, okay? So that's probably the most common use for the left function. Okay. So any questions so far? How many of you were familiar with left, right, and mid? Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at actually has to do with a lot with how you manipulate names and deal with names, which I'm going to keep this simple. We're not going to deal with middle names. Okay. You can do them. And it's a lot easier if everybody has a middle name. Where it gets kind of tricky is where some do and some don't. And again, let's at least start with the simpler ones. Okay. So this is another one that's a relatively new function. And I'll say this, Google was ahead of Excel on this. They had a function called the split function. And I think the Excel developers looked and said, oh boy, we got our pants down because that's a lot better than our approach. So they only recently added the text split function, okay? So it's another one that's a new one. Now, there was always a way to split that didn't really involve using a function, which is still there, okay? And so I will show you that. So if you have a column of names, and this is sort of function approach, non-function approach, right? You can highlight your names and go to data. Oops, the wrong data. It's this one up here. And do text to columns. And sometimes it spots it. But it'll spot what it thinks is the delimiter. And a delimiter is the separator. And the most common separators are space, a comma, occasionally tabs. Okay. So here it's actually, we only need space. And notice what that did. That just separated it out into 2 columns. It does eliminate your original bottom. You don't have the full names anymore. Okay, so just be aware of that. It kind of replaces that. All right. The text split function does kind of the same thing, but it does it using a function. Okay. So let's just take a look at this. I already did it, but I'm going to do it again. And this is, by the way, not an array function. You may think it is, but it's actually not, okay? So what you're going to do with the text split function is, well, actually, in a way it is, because it's going to put it into 2 columns. So there you go. You got one that does columns, okay? But only for one item at a time, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go equals text split. I have to tell it what to split, you know, what I'm referring to. And then I have to tell it the delimiter. So the way I tell it the delimiter is to put whatever the delimiter is in quotes. So here I'm just going to do a space and a close, you know, a parentheses space, and not parentheses, quotes, space, quote. And then I'm going to close it. And what that's going to do is separate it out. Okay. Oh, we're going to do that next. We're splitting them, then we're going to talk about combining them. How's that? Okay. All right. And there we go. All right. So I had an interesting challenge recently on this, just to show you one of the uses. Okay. So I had a list of names, and they were like first name and last name, right? But I wanted to alphabetize them, you know, sort them. But I wasn't going to sort by first names. I wanted to sort by last name, right? So there was no way I could do that unless I did what? Separated them. Then I could sort, which I'm not even going to do yet because it's not what I want to cover. Once I sorted them, then I could put them back together. Okay. And what order I want to put them back together is up to me. So I could put them back together in the same order. I could do, you know, Olson, Jamie, last name, first name. Okay. But that's essentially how you split them. Now, I will tell you, you can actually do more than one delimiter at once. Here, you know, I've rarely seen situations where you would use it, but you'd have to use like squiggly brackets and put more than one in. So you'd have like a squiggly bracket and then put the quote for space. Then you'd also do a comma and the quote for comma, and then combine them. But it's kind of weird. I'm not going to do that with you. I'm just going to do
Can you combine it with trim?
You could, and in some cases you might have to, because of the way the spacing is, particularly
And you
with
could use one delimiter and then eliminate the space at the same time.
well, trim wouldn't eliminate the separator. It's going to come up in situations where you end up with an extra space where people do like J, comma, space, and then when you break it apart, you got an extra space. Do you know what I mean? So yes, you can always use trim after you've done this. So once again, if you're happy with it like this, you could do this, or you could again do what? Copy all the way down and paste values and clean up your data. Okay. Any questions? So that's how you break them apart. Now, again, you know, I'm just going to give you one. But let's say Olefson, Jeff, right? So here I go equals text split. So here my delimiter is a comma. But you'll notice over here I have an extra space. So trim could fix that. Or I could say the delimiter is comma and space. and that'll clean it up right away. See, I think that's the common mistake. They don't really realize that the separator is what? It's not just a comma. It's a comma and a what? And a space. Got it? So either way, I don't know who shouted out the question before. Was that Brian?
Yeah, it was, but yeah, I just was thinking of different ways to do it. Thank you.
Well, that just proof there are different ways of doing it. So if you made the mistake and you left the space out here, you could clean up this by doing trim.
Just a lot of times you don't think of a space as a value, but it is a value. So that's why.
Yeah, exactly. But the trick is, as you get used to it, is to realize if you treat the delimiter as actually a comma and a space, you don't have to bother with the trim. Does that make sense?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, so that's how you separate them. How do you combine them? There's actually a whole bunch of ways to combine them. The most common one is concatenate. What a horrible word, but concatenate. Okay. And so I'm going to take you through the syntax of concatenate first. All right. And I already did them, but I'll do them again. So with one of the reasons why people kind of like concatenate is it's very visual. You can kind of get a sense of what you're doing. And so what you're going to do here is you're actually going to reconstruct your name. So I'm going to do it the wrong way first. Okay. So notice the problem. Oop, what happened there? Oh, there it is. So notice the problem. All I did was tell it to combine the two words, but I didn't tell it to put any space in between, right? So what you actually have to do here is actually build the space in. So I'm going to take the first word separated by a comma, second word, whatever that delimiter is, and then third. Okay. So what if I wanted to do last name, first name with a comma separating? So I'm going to do last name, comma, and this will be, I'll see whether I screwed up, whether I need an additional space. And you see, it kind of looks wrong. It looks like I probably should have a what? Additional space there. Would you agree? There we go. Got it? And now I scroll down. And I've got my list. Okay, so what if I want? Oh, that's where it gets crazy. On combining or on separating? Yeah. Well, if you're separating, if you're combining, they would be combined. They would be separated. So you're making the delimiter. It's more going to come up here where you might have one of them that was separated by a space. There is a way to do it. If you use text split, you can put multiple parameters. I'm going to do it here, but it wouldn't have any impact. So I have to go to my squiggly, sort of what I call my squiggly parens. And then I can put more than one delimiter as the separator, and that will work. Okay. So you could handle that. Okay. If you had to. I will tell you that it will work. All right. We're not going to get that crazy today. All right. So let's look at what happens if we want to combine the names and do first initial, last name. Okay. So I'm going to pick the first name, but I'm going to nest that with the left function. So sometimes the easiest thing to do is to put down the item and then add the left function first. And I can close this because this is isolated to just that one item. Now here, my separator is probably going to be a dot and a space, right? I always get nervous if I'm going to get these right, but if you don't, you can fix it, There we go. Got it? Problem solved. Okay. So that might be a use of a left function. Got it? Now, what if I wanted to use first name, just so we're doing all the possibilities here. What if I wanted to use first full name, but only last initial, right? So here, by the way, once you start working with these, you get really good at it. Okay. All right. So here I'm going to take the full first name, right? I have to put my thinking cap on for this next one. So I'm definitely going to want a space, right? Probably going to want a space. Okay. And now I'm going to do left. Now something tells me I got something wrong there, but let's see what happens. Okay. Okay, let's see if it corrects it. So I've got that okay, right? But I'm missing something. What I'm missing is a what? Is the period, right? So I'm probably going to have to go here and add the period. Oh, okay. I put it in the wrong place. All right, let's start again. Oh, there it goes. It fixed it actually. So there it is. Got it? So I just had to, what I had to do is at the end, just add a period. So it's going first name, space, last name, just the first initial and the space, right? And that's it. Actually, that's optional, and that works. And then you scroll down. Got it? How many of you were familiar with that? So now we know how to do last name, first name, last name, initials. There is another way to do this, and that is to use another new function called text join. So the text, and again, it's just it's new, and it just has a little bit of a different syntax. So the way it works is it's equals text join. You do the delimiter first. You have to do a true or false, and I'll explain what that is. And then you just combine your various items, and it puts a separator between each item. So where this is a little bit better is if you have middle initials. Because if you're doing concatenate, you got to do first name, quote space, middle name, quote space, last name. Here, if you do one delimiter, you can just do all of them together. I just want to explain what the true is here. The true has to do with what it deals with if there's an item missing. So if you take a look at this list, it's not great because some people have middle initials and some don't, right? So if you do it with concatenate, which I did down here, you're going to end up with like problems with spacing. Like here, do you see the problem here? Got an extra space here because there's no middle initial. So it still throws the space in, even though there's no item. Now, of course, we have a way to fix this. We could always do what? Trim and fix it. So if you love concatenate, you don't want to learn a new function, you can do it with concatenate and then just take your list and use trim, right? But what's interesting, and again, it was only added in 2016, if you use text split, text join, then you don't have to worry about that because what true says is ignore the blank. Anytime there's nothing here, just ignore that item. And so when you do text join, you don't have the extra space. Do you follow? The other thing I like about it is if you do have a lot of first and middle and last names, you only have to put in the quotes once, the delimiter once. So it's kind of a little opposite. You do delimiter first, you indicate whether you want to ignore the blanks, which is true, and then you just put the three items in succession, and it just automatically puts a space between each one of these items. Okay? But either one works. So what'd you say, Maria? Yeah, it definitely is a time saver, okay, on a lot of things. So that pretty much covers, text split, text join, text, and all of that good stuff, okay? So I'm going to skip over I'm going to do it, but I want to skip over this next one, kind of the last one, and I want to go to exact, okay, and talk about exact for a minute. So I can't tell you how many times I get somebody sending me a spreadsheet and they can't figure out why they're getting two different totals. And I had one with somebody did a mistake in a VLOOKUP, and like the list looked the same, and I'm spending all my time trying to figure out like where's the extra name, or where's the missing name. Okay, so there's actually two ways of doing it. I'm going to just tell you the difference between them and why I think exact is slightly better. Okay. So I'm just going to start with the top name. If I do the first name and equals, that's a logical operator. Equal is a logical operator, greater than, less than, or equal to. And so I'm always going to get a true or false. So those are the same name. So I get a true. The only problem with this one is it will still consider it true, even if the cases are not correct. Do you follow? So exact is a little better because exact is case sensitive. But I'm going to change this. And notice, because this one's lowercase and that's uppercase, it's coming out as false. Okay. So you could just use the equals, but I think exact is a little bit better. Okay. So what I'm now going to do is scroll down. And as soon as I hit my false, that immediately tells me where I got a problem. Right? I got an extra name here that's not on this list. And then I can try to figure out why it is, but I don't have to go and try to identify item by item. Because once I make the change here, I think in this case, it looks like I didn't have Reba Gold on this one. It's kind of missing. And I'm not going to go through press because I have to copy and paste down. But if I adjust that, I should get back to seeing all trues unless there's another error somewhere. So this can be really handy. And by the way, this can be done with numbers as well. So if I've got two sets of numbers and I'm wondering why they're not totaling up when they should, I can go and use the exact function, and I can usually spot, it's usually that's one has a number the other one doesn't have or something, and then I can go try to figure out what the source of it is. So it doesn't always fix your problems, but it saves you the trouble of having to try to eyeball every single item. Like I don't need to bother with it until I hit here, and I immediately can spot the error. Okay, so how many of you were familiar with the exact function? It's kind of handy. Yes, no. Okay. I think it's good to know. It's a good tool in the toolbox for debugging. Okay, last thing. So I'm not sure that the first one of these technically is a text function, but I can cheat a little bit, right? But one of them, the first one is, okay. So there is a function called the text function. And it has to do with how text is formatted. And to be honest, I'm not going to go over all of the details on that because we could do an hour on it easily. There are just so many different ways. But it's the kind of thing where, you know, if I had different kind of phone numbers, some people left put their, you know, use parentheses, and some people use dashes. I could use a text function to clean it up. But saying I wanted XXX, you know, and then around this, but I'm just want to look at one particular unique use, which is going to help us when we use the second function to create a calendar, a monthly calendar in Excel for any month. Okay. So the function is the text, and what this does is give you the day of the week. By the way, there are other uses of this, can be kind of good. You know, if I want to know what any date is day of the week, I can use this. Okay. So here we go. We have it's text, and then it's a quote, and it's just D, 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 D. So once again, I'll do it again so you can see it. The number, and then 4 Ds. Now, that's always going to give you Saturday for some reason. There's no date in there, but let's put a date in. So today's date is June 7th, right? And that's a Wednesday. By the way, we were playing with 4 Ds. I don't know. I think that's just what the symbol that is meant to represent day of the week. Okay. I don't think it has any like deep meaning other than it's a code. Do you follow? Okay. So we were having fun with this. One of my friends, and by the way, I won this contest because I'm pretty much a history buff, which was what day of the week was December 7th, 1941? Anybody know? And it's funny, I got it right, okay, without having to check it. So the reason I knew is I had read an article about, Pearl Harbor Day, or about December 7th. And they said that one of the reasons so many people died on the Oklahoma was that on Saturday night, they had a big Battle of the Bands event, and the band that won got to sleep in, and that was the Oklahoma. So the attack was on Sunday morning, right? So if I go, that was a Sunday. So by the way, how many of you know what day of the week you were born? I'm not going to ask anybody to give their day of the week here. I don't even want to really, give private information on anybody. But if you are curious about what day of the week you were born, you can actually put your date in and it'll give you your day of the week. Okay, so we're going to need that for what I'm going to do next, which is the sequence function. Okay. So let's just talk about the sequence function for a minute. And it actually has 4 parameters. And what you're going to find a lot in Excel is, even though something has like a lot of parameters, you don't always need all of them. So if you just do sequence and you say, I want like 25 numbers, it'll automatically assume it's 1 column and automatically assume that you want to copy by ones. And so that'll just give you 25 numbers, right? But you can also get more granular about this. So I can say I want 4 columns, 4 rows, 5 columns. I want to start with 1 and I want multiples of 1. Whoops, what did I do wrong? Sam, I got to call you back. I'll call you in 10. Okay, bye. That should do it. Okay, I just probably spelled sequence wrong. So notice what that did. It just created a list of rows down, right? Okay. So we're going to need that as a tool to create a calendar. All right. So it's a bit of you have to go through a couple of hoops here, but it works pretty well. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I need the day of the week. I need to know what day of the week was the first day of the month. Got it? So June 1st was a Thursday. And then what I have to do is count back, because to do the sequence function, it has to fill it out. It has to start on Sunday. Okay. So if this is a 1, that's a 0. This is a -1. This is a -2. This is a -3. Got it? So I need to know that Sunday is a -3. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go equals sequence. For the most part, it's 5. Occasionally you need 6. If it turns out it's not enough, you can always just change it. But I'm going to assume I'm going to have to go down 5 rows. The second is always 7, because there are 7 days in a week. Got it? Now I have to tell it where to start. And I'm going to say start at -3. And then it's going to be counting by ones. Now, let's talk about what will always be the same. Almost always, the rows will be 5. The columns will always be 7. This will change depending on the day of the week, and the 1 will always be 1 because we're going to be counting by ones. Got it? So now when I close that, look what I get. So the only other thing you need to know is it 30 days pass? You have to know which months are 30 and 31 or 28. Do you follow? Okay. So now once I've done this, this is an array function. So I have to come back in. and do copy and paste special. As I said, you're going to do this a lot, values. So now I just get rid of what I don't need. There's my June calendar. Got it? So should we do July? What do you say? So July's funny because it's one of the ones where you need a 5, where you need 6. But I'm going to do it wrong first, and I'll just show you how you might correct it. Okay. So this is the hardest one because I have to count back all the way the whole week. You got it? Okay. So if Sunday is a 1, Saturday is a 1, Friday's a 0, Thursday's a -1, Wednesday's a -2, Tuesday's a -3. Let me make sure I got that right. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need a -5, right? So I'm going to go equal sequence. Here, again, I happen to know it's wrong, but I'm just going to show you how you would fix it. Okay. -5, 1. By the way, once you start doing these, it gets really easy. Okay. So what was the problem? We didn't have enough rows. Got it? So I just go back in and I go, oh, for this one, I need what? 6 rows. Whoops. And there we go, right? So now once I do that, and I always want to check that my Saturday was a 1, which was what I expected. And now I can eliminate what I don't need. And there's my calendar for July. Got it? So whether you only use it so that you can figure out what a day of the week is, or if you want to use it and combine it with sequence to create calendars, you now have all the tools you need to do that. So I think I covered everything. I'm going to stop for a minute. Probably just turn off the recording.